Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you a recent reads video where I talk about the 10 books that I've recently read and all of my thoughts on them. I'll have content warnings in the description box down below in case that's something you need. Without further ado, let's get down to the 10 books I've recently read. So to kick us off, I have a non-fiction memoir, and that is Simply More by Cynthia Erivo. This is her memoir of her life and her experiences, and it goes into a lot of detail about some of the filming projects she's done, which of course includes Wicked. And actually what I really liked about this book was how the whole thing was actually structured around her playing the role of Wicked from a young age, to starting off acting and falling into the acting career, but also to, finally getting that role. She parallels her life with Elphaba's journey, which I thought was a very neat way of centering this narrative. Cynthia Erivo is also a runner, so a lot of it is about like the pace and the running, and you can see that she has used these two things that she loves and enjoys to kind of give herself a pattern for how she's going to tell her story. And she does also tell it chronologically. We start with her very young, growing up, to what it's like as an adult, as an actor, and how her success has happened over time. I really enjoyed reading this. I think it was such a quick read. I read it all in one sitting, in one go, from start to finish. It's quite short. There's not actually that many words on a page, so it's actually easier to do that than it would be for any other non-fiction book, I believe. And yeah, I had a very good time with it. I do think sometimes it could have gone into a lot more detail, and it maintains a surface level depth into a lot of the things that she's experienced, including her experience with coming out to her black family and some of the racism that she's faced within the industry. But at the same time, I kind of respect that. I respect that Cynthia needs her privacy, that maybe she doesn't want to detail her experience coming out to her family if she doesn't want to, or if she doesn't want to go into depth about like the racist encounters that she has had. So while I, on one hand, respect her choices of what she wants to share and what she doesn't, I do think it then leaves this feeling a little bit more surface level than I personally prefer in my celebrity memoirs. So it was a good time. I read it very quickly and I appreciated the journey that I got from this. But is it my next favourite celebrity memoir? No. It took me a very, very long time, but I have finally finished reading the complete Grimm's Fairytales by the brothers Grimm. Now this is a book that I wanted to read simply because I had it on my shelf, and I always want to keep it on my shelf as a reference point for when I'm reading retellings of fairy tales or fairy tales of reference. I can look up which tale it is and kind of reread the original. They're very much not so long. Most of these fall between the 3 to 5 page mark. Some are a bit longer, some are quite a bit shorter. This is 650 pages of fairy tales, so it did take me a very long time, and I do think I feel okay about the collection in all, because I read this from start to finish. It does get a little bit repetitive. They are fairy tales that have been told over the years in various ways, so of course some fairy tales are almost duplicates because they are the same story that's been translated differently orally when passed down by different people. And the brothers Grimm were the people who penned the stories. They're not necessarily the ones who came up with the stories, but they did change some of the stories that were orally passed down, and they also were the ones to take note of them. So that's something else to note. But yeah, it was really fun when I came across any of the fairy tales that were incredibly well known or familiar to me, such as Snow White, Cinderella, all of those very popular tales. And I like how this collection structured it, so you would get one of those familiar tales, then a couple of tales that you don't know, then one of the familiar tales, so it didn't feel like you got all the juicy bits that you recognize at the beginning of the book and then none of the others, not recognizing anything. So I think it was very well laid out in that format. Lots of these are cautionary tales. Some of them have very strange messages to them. Some of them are quite funny, some of them are quite dull. It's really hard to review an anthology collection because it's definitely a mixed bag. My favourite fairy tale is actually a Hans Christian Andersen one, not a Brothers Grimm one, but from the Brothers Grimm I do really love Rapunzel. That is my favourite, and I like their version of Cinderella. Oh, and it should also be said that the Grimm's fairy tales are a lot more grim than the Disney versions. There's a lot more darkness in there, there's a lot more violence, there's a lot more death, there's a lot more revenge and comeuppance, so that's also quite entertaining to read. So yeah, I'm not sure if I recommend this one, but I do think it was very interesting in terms of like a research mind to have read this book. As you can tell, I was really in the mood to read my classics because I then also read Hard Times by Charles Dickens. I buddy read this with Abby from Abbey of Pelennor, and I've been slowly working my way through all of Dickens' books. Hard Times is one that's difficult to describe. What I would say is that it follows a man who raises his two children, Louisa and Tom, by training them with facts only. No fun, no entertainment, feelings are removed from any decision making or situation. They only study the facts. And it's about those two children and their lives as they grow up, but also the consequences of having been raised in this situation. And this book is largely commentary on the Industrial Revolution and capitalization and the consequences of that on this small town where the novel is set. You see a lot of people who are greedy for money, a lot of people who are obsessed with moving up the ladder, and also just this idea that education is everything, and that humans and their individual thoughts, feelings and experiences don't matter if they're not being productive in some way and form. This was also a really frustrating read, intentionally so, because it is full to the brim with unlikable characters. You're not really supposed to like anybody in this book for the most part, and I got so angry and frustrated at these different characters. I was just reeling, especially Tom. I could not stand him from beginning until end, and so I had a lot of fun being enraged by Tom's actions. There were some characters that were nice, and I do think that Charles Dickens fumbled the ending on this novel so much because he wrapped it up very quickly. We were running out of pages and I was like, how are we going to resolve everything by the end? And that's because he just, you know, Charles Dickens is the most wordy man ever, and for once he just wasn't being wordy when it came to the ending. So everything had to be wrapped up very hastily, a bit too quick, a bit too rushed, and I felt like certain characters did not get the righteous comeuppance or revenge or, you know, ending that they should have. So I was a bit disappointed by the ending because I was really, you know, fueled by the anger at certain characters, reading a lot. When it came to the end, I was locked in and I was eating up that suspense. The beginning of the novel is a little bit hard to get into. Charles Dickens throws a lot of characters at you straight from the get-go, and it's hard to understand, because I didn't read the synopsis beforehand, which characters were going to be the main characters, which ones we were going to focus on. But gradually as the story goes along, you get a bit used to it, the characters slim down, and you understand the narrative journey that you are on. But yeah, I think this was an okay one. Actually, towards the end I couldn't stop comparing it to A Tale of Two Cities, and it does everything that A Tale of Two Cities does, but not as well as A Tale of Two Cities does it. I've actually got two Freida McFadden novels here for you, so I'm going to start with the one that I didn't like and then go on to the one that I did like. So I read The Intruder by Freida McFadden. This is about a woman who lives in the woods and there is a storm going on. She's worried that her roof might cave in, and she sees a light out there in her shed and she's wondering who is intruding on her property. I watched Rylanne from Rylanne's Reads review this one, and she said, I don't like a book where the plot twist is that the character has just been lying to you the whole time, and I couldn't agree more. It was really disappointing because there's nothing in this thriller where you can, you know, follow clues and predict what the outcome is, or see where the story is going, and red herrings and be wrong, because the whole time the narrator is just flat out lying to you. And so it just felt really frustrating when I got to that moment where you understand everything, because it's just like, well, there's no way that you could even attempt to predict this, which makes it very, very frustrating. Is it pacey? Yes. Is it very quick and easy to read? Yes, yes, yes. Freida McFadden thrillers are always that to me, but I was just very disappointed in the way that this thriller played out. And none of the characters were particularly annoying, but none of them were incredibly likable either, and the ending has that kicker that Freida McFadden novels always do. It just has a lot of the ingredients that her novels always do, but just wasn't executed as well, in my opinion. I also read Never Lie by Freida McFadden, and I really, really enjoyed this. I've been reading pretty much a Freida McFadden one novel a month, and this one is my favourite out of all the Freida McFadden novels I've read so far. This is following a psychiatrist who says that you should never lie to her, her. She can always understand when her patients are lying to her, and she knows all of her tells. And then separately, you're following a couple who go to this house where they are viewing it to see if they can buy it. A blizzard happens, and so they are snowed into this house that they are supposed to be viewing. They're supposedly the only ones there, but there seems to be traces of somebody else lurking within the house as well. Now this is what I call a good quality thriller. All along the way, there's loads of clues and hints and things that you are slowly discovering that become more and more sinister. I was tense, I was on the edge of my seat, I wanted to keep turning the pages, I kept predicting maybe this is what's happening, maybe this is what's going on, maybe this, maybe that. And for all the Freida McFadden novels I've read, I could not predict a single thing. I was wrong on every single turn, which meant that I was very pleasantly surprised by this, and yet I still felt like there were enough clues and enough red headings for me to have figured this out if I had, you know, been more on it. So I really liked how this book played me and played with its character cast and people's mannerisms. I was so suspicious of everyone and everything for different reasons, and you know, none of them were right, and that's what I want in a thriller. So this was incredibly pacey, and while you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit to make that ending work, that was no problem for me because I just enjoyed the wild ride that it took me on. And so if you are going to read a Freida McFadden thriller and you're wondering where to start, I actually think that Never Lie is the very best place that you possibly could. One of my anticipated reads that let me down a little bit was Count Damascus by Tingle. So this is a horror novel which is set in this town which is highly religious, extremely religious, and there is a conversion camp in this town where they are converting people who are queer to being straight. That is what the conversion camp is all about. She, our main character, lives nearby this, and she starts suddenly coughing up moths, like loads and loads of moths, and she does not understand why. So what this horror novel is focusing on is the horror of a conversion camp, the horror that these camps exist and how terrible they are, but especially focusing on the consequences of the aftermath of having gone to a conversion camp. So I read this book and I read that synopsis, and I thought we'd be spending time at this conversion camp and, you know, really digging into the horrors of it, but rather than that, we don't actually spend barely any time at the conversion camp. Instead, it's post that, it's all after that. It's about the consequences and the trauma, the internalized and external trauma. And I did really like the message and the concept of this. I liked how it tackled that long-lasting trauma. I like how it became something that was very difficult for a lot of people to talk about, but also there's a lot here in terms of like hell and heaven and demons and who the true villains are. I think you can guess who the true villains are. I very much easily guessed where this book was going after a certain point, but yeah, I liked, it was satisfying. It was satisfying seeing what happens in this novel. That said, I just don't think it really dug into its themes as much as I wanted it to. Concept, fantastic. Execution, not so much. Also, because she doesn't really know what's going on, she spends a lot of time going to people and asking questions to investigate, and it just felt like all of the knowledge and meat of the story had to be told to her by other characters rather than her going to the place where all of it is happening to do the investigating there, which is, you know, ultimately more dangerous, but it would have made for a more suspenseful and entertaining novel. Instead, the way that it was structured and the way that they chose to unfold the plot meant this book lent into tell over show, and it kept me at an emotional distance rather than us being there in that camp while she does her research and feeling that suspense and fear and all of the emotions that our character does. Instead, she's having conversations with different people in different formats, and that's just a lot more, you know, laid back, relaxed, less dangerous feeling. And so I was a lot more, you know, unemotionally invested in this story. I wanted to be more emotionally invested in this story, especially with the topics that it's dealing with, than I was, unfortunately. So for me, this ended up just being an okay read. Concept, fab. Everything else, kinda eh. Up next, I have a wintry romance read, and that is Some Like It Cold by Elle McNichol. This is a young adult contemporary, an upper young adult contemporary. They're at uni. Set in a small town called Lake Christine. Our main character Jasper has been at uni for the past few years, and she's coming back to this town for the first time since she started uni, and it's kind of a goodbye. She's going there to have a great time, see her family, say an internal goodbye to her friends, and then she plans to leave and never come back. And then there's Arthur, who is our love interest and the second point of view that you get in this, and he works at a cinema. His dad has passed away. He feels haunted by the memories of his dad in this town. He's a massive crush on Jasper, and he feels very stuck in his life. Also, he's making a film about the town. So that's what the setup of this novel is. It's also set during winter time, and it is so good. I gave this book 5 stars and it became a new favourite. Jasper, our main character, is autistic, and she has been taught by her family and by everyone that she needs to repress her autism. She needs to be masking all the time, and in this novel you get to see her kind of unlearn all of that and become herself, be herself, and claim who she really is, which was just such a beautiful thing to witness. But it was also a frustrating thing to witness, because in order for her to get there, she lets a lot of people who are very terrible walk all over her. In fact, this book is chock full of unlikable characters who are ableist, who are just plain out mean and getting away with it in this town, including a lot of Jasper's family. So I really loved her storyline, because it was all about the conflict that she had within her family, learning to stand up for herself, but also to be herself. And that was a big theme in this whole book. As well as that, from Arthur's point of view, I really felt for his depiction of like grieving in a small town where you're never going to be able to escape the memories of that person for as long as you stay there. So I really connected to that emotionally, and I thought that was a very good depiction of grief. But then the other thing about Arthur is that he has had a crush on Jasper for a long time. He knows it, everybody in the town knows it. The only person who doesn't know it is Jasper. And so my slow burn heart absolutely adored the level of pining that you get when you read this novel. Arthur, he is yearning. My man knows how to yearn, my man knows how to pine, and it was just so lovely to read about. It just made my heart swoon, and then it just makes everything, when the romance, you know, comes together, all gooey and soft and entertaining. You just have to read it for yourself to understand what a charm Arthur is. He's also quite Alan Parrish coded, and as Alan Parrish is my favourite book character ever, of course I was very happy and satisfied with that. It has a lot of those cozy small town vibes, but it also shows a thread of toxicity that can happen in small towns as well. So that was kind of nice how that punctuated there as well. But yeah, Own Voices Autism Rep, if I haven't said that, because Elle McNicoll is autistic herself. Can't wait to read more in this series. Every year, me and my sister do a book exchange where she recommends me a book and then I recommend her a book. The only rule is that we have to read it by the end of the year. So I'm filming this recent reads wrap up in November, which is the month when I read The Future by Naomi Alderman. So I did manage to read it right before the end of the year. And this is like a futuristic, apocalyptic sci-fi thriller. This was very, very good. It's about some tech billionaires who have a lot of powerful technology to do with predicting the weather, to do with well-being, and they become almost monopolies across the whole industry. And then you've got one influencer who is a survival influencer, and she gets tangled up with these tech billionaires. That's all I can really say, but this is cli-fi fiction, okay? It's kind of science, sci-fi, futuristic, but a lot of it has to do with the environment, climate change, and the consequences of that, and it is pacey. I was reading this book and I was like, what's gonna happen? I can't predict a single thing. I was like, what is going on? The whole time I was like, what is going on? And the more you read, the more you understand, and the more you're just captivated by this plot that is unfolding. You're following a lot of characters, and it's a lot of commentary on capitalism and tech billionaires and the power and money they have, but equally how they choose to use it and whether we should be letting them use it and control the things they do in the way that they do. Overall, I would say that the theme is greed and revenge, and I just loved how both of those things were discussed and done. There's also quite a lot of imagery that's injected through this in a way that's quite seamless. You've got some forum pages, so this is a bit mixed media. You've got the novel and the story that it's telling, but then you've also got a forum which belongs to a religious cult, and within this forum the discussions that two characters have, analysis of the religion that they believe, is symbolic of what is happening in the other plot. And the way that those two things gradually converged and crossed over, I was like, wow, genius. But also when I was reading this, I kind of didn't expect anything to happen that would blow my mind, because it's not really a book where it's about having a plot twist, you know. It's a book about spiraling. That's how I would say. It's not a book about plot twist, it's a book about the downward spiral of these characters and what they're doing. And so it's not really about unpredictability, and yet this book decided to still serve me unpredictability amongst that downward spiral, and that was masterfully crafted and very well done and absolutely delicious to read. So by the time I turned this last page, I was like, this is a good book, this is a jolly good book. And it showed me that you can have a plot focused book that can be very entertaining. I often am a like world building reader, concept reader, characterization reader. Plot is actually the thing that pulls me in the least, and yet this did plot so well that I was like, if it was just the plot in this novel, I'd be here for it. We've also got one of our main characters who is queer. She's in a sapphic relationship. The romance was actually my least favourite thing about this book, especially with the outcome of the romance, but it is also a very secondary thing. It's not the main important part of this book, so it's easily overlooked, and then it's just all enjoyment from there. When I couldn't sleep at night, I read Good and Evil and Other Stories by Samanta Schweblin, and this short story collection is a very quiet seeming short story collection. It's stories that are about people who do things hoping that what they're doing is a good thing, but actually it turns out to be a bad thing, and the consequences of that. I think that summarizes every short story very well. The stories are quite long in terms of what you might expect in a short story collection, but I really liked each and every single one of them actually. I don't think there was a bad short story in this collection. A lot of them deal with different topics, whether that is grief, whether that is parenting, whether that's making mistakes in life or friendship, and they're not short stories where a lot happens in them. They're very quiet in that way. Like, it's a small change within the character, or a character makes a certain mistake and they have to, you know, reconcile with the new person that they are after making that mistake. It's not like groundbreaking big plot focused things happening. It's very much a characterization study, but I did enjoy each and every one of them, and I really liked Samanta's writing style. There's just something about the way that she writes about a very everyday, very normal thing or element or moment, but she casts it in the narrative from a certain perspective that you wouldn't have considered, or describes it in a way that you just slightly never would have chosen those words to describe that certain thing, and it brings across the emotion in such a vivid way. So I really liked the entirety of this collection. It kept me company on some very late, difficult insomniac nights. And I should also say that this is translated from Spanish. Samanta writes in Spanish, and a lot of this is set in Buenos Aires, but not all of it. And then last but not least, I read a poetry collection called Stop All the Clocks by W.H. Auden. This is a collection on poems of love and loss, exactly as it says down on the cover, and I liked this for the most part. Surprising no one, me, who considers grief one of their special subjects, enjoyed the poems that were on loss more than the ones on love, which actually meant I struggled with the beginning of the collection because that's predominantly the love poems, and then the second half of the collection goes into the loss poems, which I enjoyed a lot more. There's just something about Auden's writing style that just didn't quite gel with me. A lot of that has to do with the rhythm of these poems. I read my poetry out loud sometimes when I'm struggling with the rhythm, and I could just never quite line up, you know, the line breaks and the syllables and everything to get a nice rhythm going when I was reading his poetry. I think it's a bit out of sync when it comes to that. But that said, I don't think these poems are a lost cause. I especially liked some of those that have to do with the World War. I thought they were very emotional and intelligent. And then every now and again there was a poem where I was like, oh, this pace, I get this pace, I get this rhythm, and then I could sink into it. And some of these poems are truly like lovely in their wording, like they're just nice poems, and I so rarely read nice poems. I think a lot of the poetry I gravitate towards are quite heavy in topic and concept, so reading some of the love poems I was like, oh, that's actually just really nice. You know, if someone said that about me, that would be nice. So I did enjoy reading some of the romantic poems just because they were a good time. So overall, a bit of a mixed bag in terms of this poetry collection, but I'm still very glad I read it. And there you have it. Those are 10 books that I've recently read and all of my thoughts on them. Please let me know in the comment section down below what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it. Have we got any of these books in common? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!